everybody, what's up? This is Dr. Lauren Pitts Bounds. This is Dr. Pitts Tips Live. Welcome back. Happy Thursday, all that good stuff. Hopefully, you are someplace in the country that is warm and not as crazy as it has been in Texas. I moved to Texas for a few different reasons, but I am here to tell you it has been unseasonably cold here, and I am sick and tired of being cold, and I'm downright cranky about it, but it's going to be all right. So, for those of you who tune in regularly, you know the whole purpose of me coming before you live on Thursdays now is because there's so much stigma around behavioral and mental health and relationship health that people, you know, a lot of people won't go to therapy. So I was like, you know what? I'm talking to my social media manager. She said, well, Dr. Pitts, if people won't go to therapy, why don't we bring therapy to them? And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. So here we are. We are bringing a piece of therapy to you every Thursday from 7 to ish 7:30 ish, 7:45 ish, maybe 8 o'clock ish, depending on what the topic is for the day. But I want to talk to you tonight about, what do you expect? What do you expect? Do you know? Well, Dr. Pitts, what are you talking about? Well, let me say it like this first. We have three types of relationships with our expectations. We do. We do. You have the expectations that you impose on others. You have the expectations that others impose on you and how you respond to them. And you have the expectations that you impose upon yourself. So, what happens when those expectations are too high? That's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked. Do you become stressed out? Are you angry all the time? Are you depressed? Are you anxious? Or is it something worse? Research has shown us that setting expectations too high has been linked to stress, depression, and a wealth of other issues that you need to be aware of. And I'd be lying to you if I said that I don't get frustrated with the number of clients and people in my personal life that talk to me about perfectionism. Well, Dr. Pitts, you know I'm a perfectionist. You, Dr. Pitts, you know I'm a perfectionist. You do know that none of us are perfect. It is impossible to achieve perfection. It is like a dog chasing its tail that, are you going to catch it? I don't know. Do dogs catch their tails? Maybe they do. I don't do pets. But this is what I'll tell you. That whole perfectionist thing is a recipe for disaster. I've touched before on there used to be a commercial on that showed a car driving down the road, and one of the exits was perfectionist or perfectionism or something like that. And the faster the car went, the further away the exit got. And that's exactly what happens in our lives when we are bound and determined to be perfect. What I recommend to my clients and to people in my personal life, and the advice that I take for myself, is don't strive for perfection. Strive for excellence. Strive for greatness. Because we're all human. We're all flawed. Somebody said to me the other day that they felt like a failure. And I broke it down for them personally, and I broke it down for them clinically. And I said, you're not a failure. And quite frankly, I don't ever want to hear that come out of your mouth again. What I want you to understand is that failure really isn't failure. Failure is feedback. So you have to be able to give yourself some breathing room to be able to be the flawed human being that you are, and recognize that your flaws leave room for you to grow and to mature and to develop. When you think about your expectations, it's, what do you want to happen? It's sort of like a prediction of sorts, right? And what we know to be true is, for a lot of people, when things don't turn out the way that they want, they flip their script, they lose their mind, they just cut a fool sometime. But the reality of it is that we can always bank on the fact that things are not going to always go the way we want them to go. And then you have the other group of people that don't have any expectations at all, or they set expectations so low that it almost becomes enabling, because the people in your life, whether it be a romantic partner or your children or whomever it is that you're connected to, why do they have to do anything? You don't have any expectations of them. And if I can be honest, it's my opinion that by having expectations too low, in other words, by setting the bar so low that it's like there's really no motivation to do anything beyond what you've always done, that that sets the stage for people to be substandard and mediocre on purpose. Is that you? Are you that person that is quick to default to, you don't have any expectations for anybody? And the problem with that is that, if we're honest, we all have expectations. You say that you don't, but you do. And when you reflect upon how you're navigating life and how you think, feel, function, and navigate life, if you don't have any expectations of the people in your life, why do you get so pissed off when things don't go your way? Why do you get so aggravated and frustrated when somebody told you that they're going to give you a ride, or somebody told you that they're coming to the luncheon that you're having, or somebody told you that they would give you a call to wake you up or take you to the doctors, or whatever the case may be? If you don't have any expectations, then how do you explain the emotional reaction that you have when the person disappoints because they don't live up to the what expectations that you imposed upon them? So it's really important to understand that there is this difference between setting expectations too high, having expectations that are too low or non-existent, or somewhere in the middle. But the bottom line is that expectations are about control. They're about the control, if you will, that you impose upon others, because otherwise, why would you become so frustrated? Wait, let me pause. I'm only talking to those people that are actually going to be honest about how they react when they impose an expectation upon someone and that person doesn't do what they want them to do when they want them to do it. We only have control over ourselves. So, and you'll hear me say this quite frequently, you have to be willing to give people space to respond to you. And yes, parents, that even means your children. Well, Dr. Pitts, I mean, this is my house. I'm the king of this castle. I'm the queen of this castle. And what I say goes. Okay. Let me know how that works out for you. Many a parent has made the mistake of thinking that just because you're the parent and what you say goes, that it's going to turn out the way that you want it to turn out. Is that realistic? It doesn't always do that. It doesn't always turn out that way. So you have to take a look at how you're imposing expectations upon other people, and do they have the capacity, do they have the willingness to honor the expectation that you've imposed upon them? Or are you strong arming them, or controlling them, or manipulating them, or dominating them, or being overbearing with them, and sort of backing them into a corner and making them feel like they don't have any other option other than to live up to the expectations that you've imposed upon them? Well, let's look at that for a minute within the context of the parent-child relationship. As someone who spent a good portion of my clinical career thus far working with children, I can tell you that that dogmatic, that rigid parenting style has contributed in a major way to psychological issues with your children, because the pressure of trying to live up to these over the top expectations that parents have imposed upon their children is debilitating for some kids. So take into consideration if the expectations that you're imposing upon your child are within their capacity or even their willingness to meet that expectation that you're imposing. I remember it was several years ago where my son and I were talking, and he was having a moment, and he had shared with me a conversation that he had with one of his friends. And one of his friends was talking to him about why he was so stressed out. And his response to the friend was, "Man, don't you know who my parents are?" So I had to sit him down because do his father and I expect his best? We do. We absolutely positively do, because we know that he is capable of greatness and excellence. But we also know that he's human. We also know that he has feelings and pressures, and there are things that are going on in his head and in his heart and in his life now as an adult, and even when he was a child, that we might not necessarily be privy to, that we might not be fully understanding of if he has disclosed those things to us. So I had to explain to him that your life's journey is not about you living up to the expectations that you believe that we have imposed upon you. The expectations that we imposed were preferably, not a mandate, but this is the preference: no children without being married, graduate from college, get decent grades, decide on a career, and navigate life being the most moral, decent human being that you can be based upon what you've been taught. In other words, our ultimate expectation of him was to be a decent human being. Now, decent is subjective, it is open to interpretation, right? And the bottom line here is, let's talk about some things. And that's what I love about being a parent. I set the stage for him to be able to speak with me openly and honestly about whatever he's thinking or feeling. Excuse me. And that has created space for him to be able to question me respectfully about what I think or what I feel about some things that may be going on in his life. And that's my challenge to you. Instead of giving your children all of these mandates, instead of living vicariously through your children and imposing upon them expectations that, and I say this respectfully, that you yourself probably couldn't even have lived up to if you were their age at this particular day and time. Why don't you actually have a conversation with them instead of talking at them to see how they genuinely and sincerely feel about the expectations that you're imposing upon them? If they believe that they have the ability to meet those expectations, and they need to be able to have that emotionally safe space, that if they can't meet those expectations, they need to be able to communicate that to you. You not rip their head off and, verbally assault them and further debilitate them and convey to them that it's not safe for them to have these open and honest conversations with you about whatever it is they have going on as it relates to their response to your expectations. So how do you know if your expectations of yourself, here we go, are too high? Let's talk about the little things. Are you that person that loses your ever loving mind if you are running late for work and you made the mistake of thinking that there weren't going to be any traffic jams, that there weren't going to be any red lights, that there weren't going to be any trains crossing the tracks that you have to go across every day? Oh, and that the elevator wasn't going to be out at your office? Or are you that person that flips smooth out, and the normal disruptions that all of us go through in life throw you off, ruin your whole day, and have you stank and ilky to everybody that crosses your path? Is that you? Or Are you this person that feels like people just constantly let you down? You know, you can't catch a break. Don't nobody ever do wham wham wham. Don't nobody ever do for you what they say they're gonna do. Everybody's a big old letdown. I can't count on nobody for nothing. Is that you? I'm just saying. It, does that sound familiar? Do you tend to obsess over details? And I'm not talking about, I's dotted and T's crossed. I'm talking about you're the person that, you know, proofreads the same document 25 times over and over and over and over and over again? Are you the person that, you're having dinner guests over and you walk around the table 6 times, and each time you walk around the table, one of the knives or the forks or the spoons looks crooked to you, or the napkin, so you got to move stuff, or you got to position the glasses just because it moved by itself an inch when the breeze of your body walking past it 6 times. Is that you? Or other people accusing you of being too judgmental, too critical, or it's calling you outright a perfectionist? Do you live your life through checklists? Are you the checklist king and queen? You got a checklist for everything. You got a checklist for the laundry. You got a checklist for the pets. You got a checklist for the kids. You got a checklist for the car. You got checklists just stuck everywhere. Checklist, 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 checklist. Your life is being driven crazy. But matter of fact, you even got a checklist for your future husband and your future wife. They gotta have this and they gotta have that and they gotta have the other. They gotta be 6'2". They gotta be chocolate. They gotta be caramel. I don't, you know what? I don't want no black or brown man. I want me a Caucasian man, and he need to look like whoever he need to look like. You got a checklist for everything. He need to make 6 figures and have a 10-year plan of how he's gonna hit 7 figures, and she needs to be built like a Coke bottle. You do know it'll take us a couple babies and that Coke bottle gonna turn into a 2 liter, but that's a whole different show. Is that you? You the checklist king and queen? Do you live your life constantly feeling dissatisfied and frustrated and empty? Is that you? Or are you the person that feels guilty about making your own self care a priority? Are you the person that feels guilty when you want to say no? You need to say no, but you don't say no. Is that you? Are you resentful of people because they don't do what you say do when you say do it? So this is what I want you to know. If you are that person that has set expectations so high that it is manifesting itself in your life in those ways that I just described, and maybe a wealth of other ways, you need to pause. Setting expectations too high, they're affecting your mood. They're affecting your attitude. But guess what? They're also going to have an adverse effect on. They're going to adversely affect your mental health, and they're going to adversely affect your relationships. If you are constantly finding yourself setting expectations too high for the other people in your life, it, beyond the shadow of a doubt, if it's not already, I'm going to roll the dice and say that you're already experiencing this challenge, but it's going to bring trouble to your relationships. You're going to end up having intimacy issues, and quite frankly, you might end up quite lonely. I actually have clients that come to me and say, Dr. Pitts, help me, because I have become really comfortable being alone. And what I say as I'm guiding them through the intake assessments and taking the deep dive and really getting to understand them on a much deeper level, what I say is, oh, so there are situations and circumstances that have transpired in your life that have been instrumental in leading you to believe that you can't count on other people to meet your expectations. And that's an indicator to me that things have happened to fracture how you attach to other people. The psychological issues. Because see, here's the thing about relationship, behavioral, and mental health. In a lot of ways, it's cyclical. It's like the things that are going on in your life that affect your physical health, that affect your mental health, that affect your, it's like you're on a merry-go-round, and every little rung on the merry-go-round, I'm going to use a clinical word, systemically, is a representation of some aspect of your life that's being impacted by these expectations that seemingly are too high. One of the biggest issues psychologically that we see with setting expectations too high is perfectionism, low self-esteem, negative self-beliefs or core beliefs, fear of intimacy. Goodness gracious, that's a big one. Somebody told me the other day that the explanation that their partner gave them for why they have cheated on every partner that they've ever been with is because they're all going to leave anyway, so why should the individual be faithful? Boo boo. You need a therapist. Mm-hmm. You need a therapist. That core belief is alarming, and it lacks accountability for one's own behavior, one's own choices in life. There's a fear of failure that's associated with setting expectations too high. As I said, I had someone say to me the other day that they felt like a failure. And let me just say, there is nothing about this person's life that remotely looks anything like failure. Like, absolutely, positively nothing. I was able to give the person a laundry list of things that clearly indicated that that narrative that they had adopted, referring to themselves as a failure, was a cognitive distortion. But it's there. You, in essence, you set expectations so high that you set yourself up to fail. And then for some others, there's a fear of change associated with it. So you got to ask yourself, why am I so prone to always set such high expectations? And that's a great question. A lot of times, it's a learned habit. You were born and raised in it. It's become your normal, even to your own detriment. So you've got to do some exploring. You have to take a deep dive and do some soul searching to really get greater clarity on what your true authentic expectations are, not what somebody tells you your expectations should be. What do you want? What do you need? What's important to you based upon your belief system, based upon your moral code, based upon your value system? You have to do what we call is taking an expectation inventory. In other words, sit down, and write out what your expectations are for every area of your life. And when you do that, what should become clear to you is, if you do this honestly, if you do this vulnerably and transparently, what should become clear to you is this an expectation that you set for yourself? Or is this your response to an expectation that's been imposed upon you? And how are you responding to it? You've got to ask yourself, like, block out everybody else. and I say this respectfully, disregard mama and yum, disregard your friends and your, what do you want? What do you want for your work or career? What do you want as it relates to family? What do you want as it relates to home, finances? We call those the primary domains of your life. Your overall health and well-being, your relationships, your academic and career trajectory or aspirations, how you spend your time and with whom you spend your time, and your financial situation. You need to be able to get honest with yourself about what you want for your life. And don't forget to think about your leisure time, your spirituality, your social life. All of that comes into play. And get the voices out of your head of what everybody else is telling you that you should do, need to do. If you wasn't crazy, just that. What do you want? It reminds me of a scene in one of my favorite movies, The Notebook. He said, "What do you want?" And Rachel McAdams said, "It doesn't matter because somebody's going to get hurt." And he said, "What do you want?" And that's what I'm asking you. What do you want? What do you want? You got to take the inventory one step further, and you have to start, we call it notice what you're noticing. You have to start paying attention to your expectations. Give yourself permission to identify the origin of your expectations. You want to connect your emotional experiences to your expectations, meaning this. Remember, I said one of the relationships that you have with expectations is your response to expectations that are imposed upon you. How you are feeling about the expectations that you're imposing upon yourself. You have to ask yourself, wait a minute, am I annoyed every time they say to me, you should go to school for this rather than this? You're not going to make any money if you go to school for that. You should go to school for this. Do I get annoyed because my heart's desire really truly is to be, you fill in the blank, but people keep telling you that's a stupid career, you're never going to be able to do that, why would you do that, you're not going to make any money? Those are the types of things that you have to think about. Do you get the warm and fuzzies when you think about the expectations that you've set for yourself? Connect your emotional experiences to your expectations, and it'll be an indicator for you whether or not your expectations are authentic or whether or not they're being imposed upon you by somebody else. Once you've created your list of expectations, it is going to require you to ask yourself some questions. I'm going to give you some quick questions, and then I had some folks that emailed some questions into me or inboxed me or something. I got them. But they asked me some questions that they'd like for me to answer while live. You have to ask yourself, is this what I really want? Or is it what my family, friends, or society want from me? How does this expectation serve me? How does this expectation hold me back from achieving my true heart's desire? What would happen, or what would it take if I let this expectation go? What would I lose? Because you do know that life is full of tedious trade-offs. As we make decisions in life, we're going to experience loss to some degree. It doesn't have to be catastrophic loss, but we are going to experience loss. What will I lose by letting go of this expectation? What would I gain by letting go of this expectation? That's the cost-benefit analysis piece. If you stay exactly the way you are at this place and space in your life right now, what is it going to cost you to do that? What are the benefits of you doing that? If you make the necessary changes and begin to assert yourself and start living authentically for you instead of for everybody else in your life, what is it going to cost you and what is it going to benefit you? You you deserve to ask yourself those questions. And that is all I have to say for now about expectations. But I want to tie this topic, and I'll take about 5 more minutes. And if anybody else has any questions, you can type them in the chat window. I got 3 lives going on here. Hopefully, I can see them all. um, One of the questions, well, actually, there were one, two, three, four. There were 4 questions that were inboxed to me um, that were in response to a reel that my husband and I did a few days ago. Um, and interestingly enough, it ties into this topic of expectations. So, and I keep the people's names anonymous because I want people to feel comfortable asking me questions that they genuinely and sincerely want to know the answers to without having to be concerned for people judging them or criticizing them or whatever the case may be, because there is no such thing as a stupid question. So, the first question is, how do you break the habit of quitting? So my husband and I, the other day, we did a reel on quitting and why it's so difficult for people to try, and it seems very easy for people to curl up in a ball and to quit things. But this is what I say first and foremost is people aren't quitting on stuff. The initial quitting is on oneself. Yeah, get that. Wrap your heart, mind, spirit, and soul around that. Yeah, you may have quit basketball, you may have quit baseball, you may have quit a relationship, you may have quit a job, you may have quit pursuing your dreams, whatever you're quitting. But first and foremost, you're quitting on yourself. And that's why it's so important to tease out and to really clarify the authentic origin of your expectations for yourself, because you need to know if what you're in pursuit of is actually what you really want to be doing. What I've found is that when we are actually in pursuit of things that we genuinely and sincerely are passionate about, the things that we really truly love, the things that we would do whether we are being paid or not, it's not easy to quit. It's not easy to throw in the towel on yourself. It's not easy to give up. So, how do you break the habit of quitting? You have to do some soul searching. You have to do some soul searching, and you have to look for the root cause of why you started quitting in the first place. Was it embarrassment? Was it shame? Was it humiliation? Was it fear? Was it lack of support? There's an antecedent to your quitting. In other words, there's something that is fueling your tendency to quit. And as we say clinically, you cannot fix what you will not acknowledge and confront. So, in order for you to break the habit of quitting, you have to understand why you became a quitter in the first place. You need to be able to tease that out and unpack that and get to the underlying reason that's fueling your decisions to quit, first and foremost on yourself, and then on other things that you initially said you really wanted to do. The second question was, if someone cheats one time, so we did a reel on cheating too. If someone cheats one time, should that be a deal breaker and end a good relationship? There's no cookie cutter answer to this question. Again, it ties into expectations, right? Have you communicated your expectations around fidelity going into the relationship? Or are you someone that is finding yourself in these repeated broken relationships, and you're one of these people who every partner that you've ever been with has cheated on you? Okay, well, let me tease that out from a clinical perspective for a moment. When people tell me that, and I say this respectfully, when people say that to me, I say, well, you do know that you're the common denominator in every relationship that you've been in. So Is it an issue that everybody that you've ever been with is cheating on you? It absolutely is. But why? Why are you repeatedly finding yourself in relationships with people who cheat? That's the $1 million question. What personal deficiency do you have that is resulting in you hooking up with intimate partners that are cheating on you? So, if it's a deal breaker, that's a personal choice. But here's the thing, and I need you to hear me really, really well on this one because this comes up a lot. We're all flawed. We all, believe it or not, every single solitary human being on the face of the planet has the potential to be a cheater, just like we have the potential to be a thief, or we have the potential to be a liar, or we have the potential to be whatever, because we're human and we're flawed. Never say never, because you never know what might happen that could lead you down a path that you thought that you would never in a million years go down that path. So the umbrella answer to that question is the two people in the relationship need to have a discussion regarding what are the expectations around fidelity. And I touched on this, it was either last week or the week before. Whenever there is infidelity, there has to be a mature, adult, responsible, emotional, regulated conversation regarding why the partner that cheated in the first place. Because here's what I believe: if you don't understand why the person cheated, more than likely it's going to happen to you again. You need to know what led to that person cheating. Was it their junk, or was it a combination of things? You have to be able to honestly address that, and there has to be accountability and responsibility. So for you, if you're somebody that's being cheated on, your accountability and responsibility again might be, why do I keep ending up in relationships with people who cheat on me? The flip side of that coin is that, and this is just my personal boundary, I've extended grace to people that have cheated on me. Why? Because once upon a time I was a cheater. I'm just saying. I've disclosed that. I've been totally vulnerable and transparent and sharing that with listeners. I've cheated. So how dare I act like I walk on water and I'm so muchy much that if someone cheats on me, that's it. But that's me. So it's going to be person specific. My recommendation clinically is to explore and find out the honest contributing factors to why the person cheated in the first place, and then appropriately address that so that hopefully it doesn't become an issue. Third question was, if I'm still working with an ex and they're hitting on me, what's the best way to handle this? Ooh, that's a good one. That's a boundary question. But there's some accountability here. So this is what I say, you know, depending on where you are in the stage of the life cycle, most people, even little kids, know when somebody likes them, right? Even children, adolescents, people know when somebody else is feeling them. You know that, right? So you got to ask yourself, are you doing something that's inviting this attention? Are you feeding off of it? Are you entertaining it? There has to be accountability there first. You got to own anything that you may be saying or doing that has led this person to believe that it's okay to hit on you. The flip side of that coin is, that's a boundary issue, right? So there needs to be communication around what the expectation is for conduct, especially if you work with this person, right? And it's going to come into conversation about respect, respecting you as a person, respecting your relationship, respecting your partner. You have to be able to address all of those things. And then if the person continues to disregard your position on that, now it may be time to take that conversation to another level. And no, you don't want to have to report someone that you used to deal with to HR, but do you want to compromise your relationship or your job because you are dealing with somebody that doesn't know how to respect boundaries? The last question is, what if my partner cannot handle me being super transparent? Is it okay to not tell them certain things if it will upset them? I think that's a recipe for disaster. And I'm gonna regulate my emotions because this is one that rustles my feathers. I need grown folks to be grown. The moment you hit 18, and yes, there are some things that have to be learned. Let's keep that real. There are some things that have to be learned when it comes to learning how to conduct oneself as a mature, responsible adult. In that, though, there has to be a willingness to put your big girl panties on, to put your big boy boxers on, and to have healthy, appropriate elephant in the room conversations. Withholding information that has the ability to have an adverse impact on your relationship is a bad decision. There has to be a learned way to communicate important information in a way that it can be received. Let me say it like this. We need to learn how to speak so that our partners want to listen, and we need to learn how to listen so that our partners want to speak. We need to learn how to speak to be understood, and we need to learn how to listen to understand. So when it is time to have the elephant in the room conversations, if you are not able to be a responsible, mature adult, that's a whole nother issue all by itself. And that needs to be addressed because you should be able to speak openly and honestly with your partner in an emotionally safe space about anything that you need to speak openly and honestly about. The question, though, that you have to ask yourself is, what is the reason for this super transparency? Are you just purging? Or are you word vomiting? Are you just dumping? Or is there some significance to the relationship and to your own well-being and to your partner's own well-being that requires that transparency? One of the things that my husband and I have agreed upon is if it has no bearing on our relationship, why do I need to know it? If it doesn't have any bearing, positive or negative, on our relationship, why do I need to know it? And then the second thing is, and this again, this is just the parameters that my husband and I have put in place. Don't ask me questions that you're not sure if you can handle the answer to, because I'm going to be honest with you. Because I expect, even though it may be an ouch conversation, I expect to be able to have adult conversations with adults. So if you're not sure if you can handle the truth, whatever you envision that truth might be, don't ask me, because I'm going to tell you the truth. And I don't want my back kicked in And I don't want to be judged and criticized, belittled, degraded, demeaned, and all of those other crazy things that arise because I answered a question that you asked me honestly. Because when that happens, that's an indication one, it wasn't emotionally safe for me to do that. Two, I can't trust you with my vulnerability. And that is not okay in an intimate relationship. So, that is all I have. There have been no other questions asked. And on that, I say good night. Moving forward, as we said before, if you have any questions at all that you want to be addressed during the live, you can inbox me, you can email me through my website, drlaurendpitts.com. Rock out. Or you can ask them live in real time during the lives. I want you all to have a great evening. If you're someplace where it's cold, stay warm. Let's get therapy-tized. Y'all have a great night. Bye-bye.